here in San Antonio. And the reason I tell you that so early is to let you know that even though I've lived in this city for over 20 years, my company, Casa Rio, still knows I have a really bad reputation of getting lost on the river. So you may actually end up with a longer tour today until I can find my way back. You okay with a longer time on the river?
Yeah, but it might be.
Okay, I'll do my very best to have you all back before breakfast tomorrow morning, okay? So a couple of little safety notices as we get going. Please no standing up or walking around on the boat, no standing on any seats, remain seated at all times, especially when we go through the rapids a little bit later on. Also, be very careful leaning over the side of the boat with your very expensive cell phone, just in case we bump into a whale or a submarine. I don't want to see that phone end up on the bottom of the river. Please no smoking or vaping on board the boat. I'm also going to ask you to resist the temptation of trying to touch little bridges when we go underneath as well. And in the event that you end up in the river, well, don't panic. I have a whole boatload of life jackets on board with us, and I'm more than happy to throw them in your direction. You can save. Well, this interesting looking bridge we're about to go under here was built by the Berlin Bridge Company. That's Berlin in Connecticut, not in Germany. And the Berlin Bridge Company actually built 5 bridges for the San Antonio Riverwalk. They're all of the same design as this one. This type of bridge is called a lenticular truss bridge. Now, coming up on our right hand side where all the ducks are, underneath the giant cypress tree, this is in fact a little island. It's a heart-shaped island, a very romantic spot on the river. This is known as Marriage Island. On average, there are over 300 weddings performed on that little island there every year. There were a couple there yesterday afternoon, but a couple of Saturdays ago, a very busy time on the island. As I was giving my tours around the river that Saturday, I counted 8 weddings held on the island throughout the day. A very popular place to get married in San Antonio, and you know, over recent times it's also become a popular venue for proposals and for the renewal of vows as well. Now, back in the mid-1800s, there weren't too many bridges going over the San Antonio River. That bridge we just went under wasn't here then. It was arrived here in 1922. Fashion on the bridges one might find in the city of Paris. Also, in the mid-1800s, there weren't too many safe places where the locals could bring their wagons and horses across the river. This was a good spot through here, though. It was always very shallow in those days. There was a mill grinding the grain at the edge of the river here then. So in the mid-1800s, this part of the river became known as the Old Mill Crossing. You might be able to see the gargoyles hanging off the building up there like rainwater spouts hanging on for dear life. Once you find the gargoyles at the top of the building, just have a look at the outside wall next to us. Just go up 1 story above from where we are. There's a row of faces all the way along the side of the building looking down at us from the 1st floor level. Well, those faces watching you from the building are called grotesque faces. The building itself was built back in 1929. It was built by 2 brothers, the Smith brothers, and they were very superstitious guys. They didn't want to see any bad luck come to their brand new building in 1929. So as they were building it, they installed gargoyles and the grotesque faces on the building in order to keep bad luck away from their pride and joy. Well, the Smith brothers thought that was a pretty good plan. Sadly though, it didn't work so well. They lost their building only a couple of years later in the Great Depression. But they left us with a great legacy. If you have a look back at that building from this angle, a lot of people tell me when they look at that building from here, using their imagination in the shape of that building, they can see the front or the bow of a very, very tall ship cruising towards us in the shape of that building. Now, a lot of people, you know, who have got an extraordinary imagination, not only can see the ship in the shape of the building, they can also hear that ship's horn as well. Wow, you guys are good, look at that. Well, this is a floodgate that we're going through here. It's one of 2 floodgates we'll be going through on our journey. At this point, we're going to be leaving the natural river. We've been on the river since we began, but the river takes a turn to the left, and it heads down to the Gulf of Mexico, a couple of 100 miles away down in that direction. We're going to turn to the right. We're heading north. We're turning into this man-made channel. Now this man-made channel, together with the floodgate behind us and another floodgate up ahead, all part of the flood control system we have in San Antonio. When the floodwaters come surging down the river from the north in front of us, the Riverwalk can be protected by closing the floodgates and sending all the floodwaters to the Gulf behind us. So the San Antonio Riverwalk, as pretty as it is, with all the cute little bridges we see in the outdoor theatre, is actually a flood control program designed by the father of the Riverwalk, Robert Hugman. Well, if you can handle the glare, have a look over my shoulder back at this bridge. You'll see all the padlocks attached to that bridge back there. Now those padlocks are on both sides of the bridge, so there's a lot of them up there. This is our Lovelock Bridge. When people get married in San Antonio, the custom is, they find their way to the Lovelock Bridge. They'll bring along the padlock. They'll write their names, date on the padlock, attach it to the bridge, and then the tradition is they will throw the key in the river. And that symbolises eternal and everlasting love, and that's been a popular activity there going back to about 2012. Thousands of Lovelocks on that bridge from that activity over those years. On our left-hand side, you'll see the sign that says Main Plaza. Have a look back between the trees on the left here, as far back as you can see, and back in the distance you'll catch a glimpse of a very historic cathedral back there. It's under a little bit of renovation at the moment. That is the San Fernando Cathedral. That's one of the oldest cathedrals in the United States, built in the mid-1700s, still in use today. If you enjoy some history, some great early San Antonio history back there, and that beautiful cathedral to explore as well. Now directly in front of the boat up ahead, that is the natural San Antonio River. From here the river winds its way northwards another 4 miles upstream. And as you can see, people like to take a stroll along the riverbank. It's pretty flat on both sides, easy going, a chance for some exercise and having a look at the Riverwalk for a few more miles northwards. But here we're going to take a right-hand turn. We're leaving the man-made channel we've been in, swinging back onto the natural San Antonio River. Here's the other floodgate that I mentioned that protects the city. Now when the floodwaters come down the river from the north, they slide this floodgate down from up above. It seals off the river here, stopping the floodwaters going into the city to cause any damage. The worst flood to hit San Antonio happened back in the year 1921. In that flood, we are told from all the reports the floodwaters were 9 feet deep across the city streets. Well, if that's true, there's a city street directly in front of the boat, St. Mary Street, one of the oldest streets in the city. So just imagine 9 feet of water across the top of that bridge, and you'll get an idea of how deep the floodwaters were in the flood of 1921, which of course was long before they installed the floodgates to protect the city. Here on our right-hand side, the oldest tavern on the Riverwalk. Next to us here on the right, this is the Esquire Tavern. Great spot to sit up on the balcony there, watching life on the river go by. The Esquire opened up back in 1933. And then next to the Esquire here on our right and up above us, the newest hotel on the Riverwalk. It's the Canopy Hotel. There are 22 stories above us. The Canopy, brand new here on the Riverwalk and to the city of San Antonio. Well, around the city of San Antonio, we're lucky that we have a number of historic old theatres that have been lovingly restored and brought back to life. One of those theatres is called the Aztec Theatre, and as we pop out from under the bridge here, over on the right-hand side where I'm pointing up here, this is the Aztec Theatre. It was built in 1926. It was the theatre you would come to back in the 1920s and 30s to see the latest movies from Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Rudolph Valentino, all showing over here on the right at the Aztec on the river. Well, sadly, the Aztec fell into a little bit of disrepair over the years. It was closed down, it was renovated, and then it became a concert venue. And some of the performers that have been at the Aztec since they've opened it include Journey, Styx, ZZ Top, Eddie Money, Casey and the Sunshine Band, and Olivia Newton-John, just to name some. Now this pretty little bridge we're coming up to here is called the Robert Hugman Bridge. I've mentioned Robert Hugman a few times already. Back in the 1920s, Robert Hugman was living here in San Antonio. He was a young architect in town, and he had a vision for the muddy little San Antonio River. Robert Hugman's vision eventually became the San Antonio Riverwalk that we're all enjoying. Fair to say, we would not be doing what we're doing today without that vision of Robert Hugman, and that beautiful little bridge behind us is named in Robert Hugman's honor. But if you saw the movie Selena with Jennifer Lopez from the late 1990s, based on the life of the great singer Selena Quintanilla, they filmed a lot of that movie here in San Antonio. There's a memorable scene in the movie with J-Lo sitting on that bridge behind us, so we also refer to that bridge back there as the Selena Bridge. And the building on our left-hand side, it came into being back in 1853 as a boys' boarding school. That school grew and grew over the years. Eventually, it became St. Mary's University Law School. In time, the law school outgrew this location. So the campus was moved 4 miles outside the city. The building on our left was sold and renovated, and it became a hotel. Now it is the very historic Omni Mansion Hotel. Coming up in front of the boat, ahead of us on the left-hand side, you'll see the restaurant Bubba Gum. As we come out from under the bridge, have a look at the building up on top of Bubba Gum, high on our left, and it looks like the building up here above us is balancing off one wall up there. Oh, man. Well, have no fear, that building has been there since 1930. That is the former Nix Hospital. It was the first air-conditioned hospital in the United States. No longer a hospital, that building on our left is sold, it's empty, and it will become a new luxury hotel on the Riverwalk in the future. Some of the people, though, who were born in the Nix Hospital back in the day, the legendary entertainer Carol Burnett, who grew up here in San Antonio, and also Colonel Oliver North. He was also born in the Nix Hospital. Now the building coming up in front of the boat, this is the Hyatt Regency Hotel. This hotel was built 1981. Now when the Hyatt Regency Hotel was constructed, the height of the building was kept at 16 stories. That was done for a reason. You see on the other side of the hotel from where we are sits the Alamo, and nobody wanted a shadow over the Alamo at sunset. So it was determined to keep this building on our left here to 16 stories in height, and that way at sunset every day the Alamo on the other side will never be in shade. And if you've ever heard of a singer by the name of Phil Collins, well, apart from giving us some great music over the years, Phil Collins has another passion in his life apart from music. That happens to be the Alamo. He's even written a book about it. Over the years, Phil Collins has collected hundreds of artifacts from the Alamo worth millions of dollars, donated back to the Alamo for a museum for those artifacts. On our right-hand side, the Casino Club building, it was built 1927. Up on top of the building on our right above us here, there are apartments up there. One of the famous residents of those apartments in years gone by, the author Alex Haley. He lived here in San Antonio for a short while in this Casino Club building. And he must have enjoyed his time here because he encouraged his good friend Maya Angelou to come and live here as well, which she did. She fell in love with San Antonio and the Riverwalk just like Alex Haley. Well, this is always a pretty popular part of the Riverwalk. This is known as River Square. Lots of great restaurants here, as you can see, either side, all sorts of fabulous dining experiences. Now before we go underneath the Commerce Street Bridge, which is coming up in front of us here, on the right-hand side ahead of us there is a building with a curved balcony. On the front of the balcony, coming up on the right-hand side, it says Hugman Architect. Well, I've mentioned Robert Hugman a few times, the man we call the father of the Riverwalk. He designed the Riverwalk we're all enjoying. Well, this building on our right-hand side here, bearing his name, was Robert Hugman's architect office in the 1940s as the Riverwalk was being constructed. And near the staircase over there on the right, tucked away in the corner, a bust of Robert Hugman, that's what he looked like right there, and a little bit of a storyboard that gives some background information on how the San Antonio Riverwalk came to be. It's a good read if you find your way back to this part of the river. Well, we're coming up to this iconic restaurant here in front of the boat with the colourful umbrellas, and this is called Casa Rio. Well, Casa Rio holds the honour of being the first restaurant to open on the San Antonio Riverwalk. It opened in 1946. It was opened by Alfred Beyer. And you know, to this day, Alfred Beyer's family still own and operate Casa Rio. Well, back in the 1940s, the custom was you would come down here to this section of the river. You would enjoy your delicious meal here at Casa Rio, and then you were invited to take a gondola ride up and down the river where we are right here. That practice gave rise to San Antonio's nickname back in those days, which was America's Venice. Once again, we're leaving the natural San Antonio River here at this point, taking a left-hand turn, and we've swung into this man-made channel. And this channel we're in was completed in 1968. A big year for the city of San Antonio. That was the year the World's Fair came to town. It was called Hemisphere. Well, Hemisphere brought 6 million visitors to the city of San Antonio. And there was a need for a better transport system to move those 6 million people around the city and to help them get closer to the World's Fair under the Tower of the Americas. So this channel that we're in here was completed. It's about 3 feet deep, extending the Riverwalk a little further into this part of the city. And that allowed those 6 million visitors and the locals easier access to the World's Fair under the Tower of the Americas, which we'll see very shortly. Now, going back to the year 1985, there were plans to build a new hotel downtown. But there was a bit of an issue. There was already a hotel sitting on the site where they wanted to build a new one. The hotel that was already sitting there was a very historic hotel. It was called the Fairmount Hotel. And the Fairmount had been sitting there since 1906. Nobody really wanted to see the Fairmount destroyed just to build another hotel in its place. So they had a bit of a problem. Well, a team of engineers were brought in with their expert advice. They said, leave it to us. So in March of 1985, the engineers all got to work. They jacked up the 3-story, 1,600-ton Fairmount Hotel. They loaded the entire hotel onto the back of 36 giant dollies. And then they proceeded to tow that hotel for half a mile through the streets of San Antonio to another location. That half-mile journey, towing the hotel through the San Antonio streets, took 6 days to complete. They were travelling at less than 1 mile an hour towing the hotel. But they eventually got the Fairmount to where they wanted it. They put it down and it's still there today. The hotel they built in its place back in 1985, once they moved it, is that white building in front of the boat, the Marriott Hotel. Also in front of the boat, the newest art feature on the Riverwalk, this sculpture in front of us, is called Stargazer. Stargazer is 16 feet high, made up of over 80 blocks of volcanic stone. And over on our right hand side of the boat, up between the trees, there is the symbol of the World's Fair. Back in 1968, the World's Fair was held at the base of that tower at Hemisphere Park. That is the Tower of the Americas. The big tall circular tower is 750 feet high. It has an observation deck right at the very top. There's also a revolving restaurant up there called the Chart House. Now the Chart House turns around once every hour, offering panoramic views of the city. A great place to be later in the day when all the city lights start coming on. If you are planning on going up to the top of the tower, which I thoroughly recommend, you'll have a choice of 4 ways you can get up there. There are 3 elevators and 1 set of stairs. Now that set of stairs has 952 steps all the way to the top. A great way to work up an appetite if you plan on going up to the restaurant for a meal. Well, around the Riverwalk we actually have 3 locations where you can begin one of our tours. And this is another location right here. This is called the Shops and River Centre. And all of this was created back in 1988 at a cost of $250 million. Coming up in front of the boat, San Antonio's 2nd largest shopping mall. This shopping mall in front of us has got over 1 million square feet of retail space inside. There are 140 places in there to shop till you drop. 37 places to enjoy food or drink, 5 restaurants, situated down here at Riverwalk level as well. Also in the shopping mall in front of us, you'll find an IMAX cinema. There's another cinema complex in there that has 10 screens. There's a comedy club, a Dallas Cowboy store, Legoland, and our brand new aquarium, all inside the shopping mall in front of us. And to give you a rough idea of where we are at this point in relation to the rest of the city of San Antonio, well, here we are only a little over a block away from the Alamo at this location right here. We're also 1 block away from San Antonio's most haunted hotel. That hotel is called the Menga Hotel. Now, the historic Menga was built in the mid-1800s, and it has a documented 32 spirits wandering throughout the hotel building. There are many people who swear they would never spend a second night in the historic Menga after all the activity they encountered there on their first night. But in saying that, I know a whole bunch of people looking forward to going and spending another night in the Menga Hotel with the hopes of another encounter. So it just comes down to your feelings on the whole subject. Well, a couple of years ago, San Antonio and surrounding areas got hit by a savage winter storm. That storm was called Uri. Uri came through here, it dumped snow right over the city. We had below freezing temperatures for almost a week, and for many nights in a row, the temperatures in San Antonio didn't even manage to get above 10 degrees. It was very, very cold. Now, the people lost power, not a very happy time. But that wintry weather we had really made a mess of the vegetation that you see along the banks of the Riverwalk. Around the Riverwalk, we have about 20,000 varieties of trees and shrubs, and that includes a whole bunch of fruit trees along the banks of the Riverwalk, which all provide pretty good fruit throughout the year. Now, as we come out from under the bridge, have a look to the right-hand side, and you'll see an 8-foot-high statue on the banks of the river. This statue is the statue of St. Anthony, or as we know him a little better, San Antonio, who gave his name to the city and the river. Now, that statue was a gift to the city at the end of the World's Fair, as I mentioned, that was held here in 1968. It was a gift from the country Portugal. San Antonio is the patron saint of Portugal. San Antonio, also known as the patron saint of lost things. Well, every so often they empty parts of the San Antonio Riverwalk to clean it out and get things off the bottom of the river that shouldn't be there. When they do that, oftentimes they find some extraordinary things lurking on the bottom. Things like tables and chairs from restaurants. They find plates and silverware, salt and pepper shakers, lots of handbags, purses, wallets, sets of car keys, sunglasses, credit cards, money, toys, hats, even electric scooters. And the number one item they find resting on the bottom of the river every time when they empty it out, very expensive cell phones. So folks, please protect your phone as we go around the river. Well, up here on the right-hand side of the boat where I'm pointing, high above the tree line here, looking great up against the Texas sky, you'll see that beautiful looking steeple up there. That steeple up on the right is attached to a very historic church on the hill. That church is St. Joseph's Catholic Church. It was built 1868. Back in the mid-1800s, one of the largest populations that lived here in San Antonio at that time was German. The church up there on the hill, built for German worship in the city. And in keeping with that tradition to this day, once a month, they hold a German service in the church, which includes an all-male German choir called the San Antonio Liederkranz. And before we go underneath the Alamo Street Bridge here in front of us, have a look up on the right-hand side of the boat, high above us there. You'll see that big orange ribbon-like structure. That is called the Torch of Friendship. Now, that sculpture up there, designed and created by the Mexican artist